All right, well, welcome back to our jumpstart on Introduction to Creating Websites using Python and Flask. Alongside Susan Ibach, I am Christopher Harrison. Now, we have been taking a look at really kind of the basics of everything, about how to handle our routing, about HTML, how to send information down, and I think now it's time to kind of bring it all together and let's start building a bigger app. Now, before I get into that, I do want to mention real quickly for everybody that is watching this live about the couple little streaming issues.
Yeah, there was a couple of things this morning. So yeah.
So one big thing to keep in mind is that this MVA will be available about 2 weeks from today. Today is Wednesday the 17th. So you can check that out in a couple of weeks if you did wind up missing some really bad jokes from the first couple of modules.
And there's incentive right there to go watch it on demand.
All right. So our big purple slide here, or my big purple slide, we could keep building all of our little files to just, send text down to our users. We could.
Yeah, because at this point, we have the ability to have multiple web pages, to move between those different web pages, so we have that ability. That's a start.
Could. By the way, that is the oddest sentence I think I've ever written. Who did the editing on this? In any event, by the way, that would be me.
That'd be you, yeah.
I really need a better editor. In any event, we could keep doing that, but that isn't going to make it very easy to create a rich UI. I mean, here, let me actually bail out of the slides for a second and let's fire back up Visual Studio here. I mean, look at this.
That's a pretty clunky line of code if you're going to have to do that every time you want to display something nicely on the screen.
And when I was having that out, one of the things that you had mentioned was that you were going to give me a high five if I did that without typos, which, by the way, you
high five. This is true. There you go. High five. You managed it.
Oh, wait. Here we go. See? There we go.
Captured.
Beautiful.
Well done.
Thank you. We could do that, but that's going to get really old really fast. And on top of that, there's a very good chance that you're going to have a division of labor between your web designers and your web programmers. That if you're anything like me, and I know I am, I'm good at the... I pull out that line every MVA. If you're anything like me, and I know I am, I'm very much a back of the house kind of guy. I can do all the programming on the back end, but if you're looking for something that's going to look very pretty, I need a lot of help. That's really not my skill, but there are people that have that skill, and I want to make it easy for them to do their thing, make it easy for me to do my thing, and then we'll bring it all together and we'll have a very good looking app at the end.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and bring all this up. So in order to do this, in order to build the application that we're going to want, we're going to need forms. So we're going to need to talk about how to allow our little user, there's my little user dude, and my user to send information up to the server. That's going to be with a form. So we need to figure that out. We also need to figure out how we're going to build better HTML. That's going to be our Jinja templates. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to build the structure of our app, that front end, and then you're going to come along and you're going to take care of the
I can do a little more back and a little more logic to the back end.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about forms. What is a form? Well, a form is all about collecting information, sending it up, and then eventually we're going to need to read that. So let's start by talking about how we're going to collect information from the user. And the way that we're going to do this is by setting up input controls.
And this is an HTML, one of the HTML controls we can use on our web pages.
Exactly. And it's worth highlighting that There's dozens of these. That there's options for drop-down lists, there's checkboxes, there's radio buttons, and you could also, with a bit of JavaScript magic, create your own. But we're trying to keep this a little bit simpler, that our main focus is on Python and on Flask and not on HTML. So we're just going to keep it real simple with our basic input controls. But I do want to highlight, once again, there's MVAs where you could learn all of this if you wanted to dig deeper. Now, the first main attribute to highlight is name. And this name is important because that's the name that's going to get sent up to the server. So you need to make sure that the name in your HTML form is going to match what you're going to be reading on the server. So name becomes important.
Okay.
And then you're going to notice right here the different options for type. And so we've got text, which is going to give us a text box. We've got password, which would give us, asterisks or little dots for the letters that we type in, so that way we don't see what the password is. Again, I'm going to go back to my tangent. Let's go back to tangent mode again. There we go. One big thing to keep in mind is that even though we say type equals password, it does not encrypt the text. So it just hides it on the display on the browser, but it doesn't encrypt it when it's sent from the client to the server. You're going to need SSL again to do that.
So it just protects you from somebody looking over your shoulder and watching you type in your password. Exactly.
It doesn't. You need to get in tangent mode.
Sorry.
Other way.
Other way. I can't get it. It's like forward slashes and backslashes.
Yeah.
I can't keep it straight.
Okay. So anyway, it's only going to put the little dots on there. The last one to mention is email, and this is one that I always get asked when I'm doing different web classes. Is how do I get on a touch keyboard the @ and the .com to automatically appear on a text box when I'm asking somebody for their email address? And the answer is type equals email. And it's worth highlighting that is a new HTML5
yes.
type.
Which, so if you're running a really old browser, it might not work, but most browsers these days support that.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't work on the touch keyboard. It's not going to bring that up. But one very cool thing is, once again, you could actually do input type equals Wibble. And what it's going to display is a text box. That, again, remember, we talked about the sort of the best attempt that the browser is going to do. If it sees type equals and it doesn't see something that it recognizes, it's going to go, well, it's probably a text box. I'm just going to give you a text box and just go with that. So it's just not going to put in the rest. So it'll still function, but it's not going to give you the cool little ad and the .com on that. Okay, now the next part is we've given you the UI to type in information. How do we get that information up to the server? We're actually going to need two things. We're going to need a submit button, and I don't have a slide on the submit button because it's going to be button type equals submit. I'll show you in a minute. But we also need to determine how we're going to send that up. And if you remember, it was get by default. So it's always going to be get by default. So when we typed in, our URL / or / create or / question, it was just simply get by default. If we want it to be post, so we want to be able to send information in the header, then what we need to do on our form, so you'll notice form and all of our input controls go inside of there, then what we need is method equals post.
Right.
Now, we could say method equals get and send that up. And you'll notice, for example, if you fire up Bing and you type something in, that it will appear inside the URL. The reason is that they said method equals get, because once again, they want to make it replayable. So you could actually take a Bing search result page, copy the URL, paste that in, and it will work because it uses method equals get, puts all that into the URL. Again, post is going to send that into the header. The other thing is the action parameter, and you'll notice that I don't have an action parameter in here.
Nope.
And the reason for that is because by default, it's going to go back to the same page. And I put that in quotes just to kind of use that kind of loosely, that if you remember, we want the ability to do create, for example. And we talked in Module 2 about that two-step process, that step 1 is going to be, sending the user the form.
The blank form to fill out. Yeah.
Exactly. And then step 2 is going to be sending that up. And we just wanted to go right back to that exact same spot because remember, again, we're going to have those two blocks of code. This is going to be get. This is going to be post. So we're just going to put all of that right inside of that one spot.
Okay, so let's.
I'm going to clear my screen because I got a lot.
So
of
if I had,
yeah.
so if I had a website, one of these ones where I'm ordering books or something, a lot of times on those, when you finish typing in your order and you sort of hit submit, it then takes you to enter your billing information. Mm-hmm. And then then when you submit that, it takes you to shipping information. That's when those actions become important?
Sort of. So the action, well, yes, actually, because if it was going to go to a different page, one of the ways to handle that would be to have different actions. So you might have one action that's going to say enter address. So I'm going to have something called address. And then I've got another one here that's maybe going to be credit card. And then I've got another one that's going to be confirm, or whatever it is that it happens to be. One of the ways that you can handle that is by using different actions. So if you wanted to send to somewhere else,
after you submit, give me this page, then I'm going to send you to the next page.
Right.
Action is one of the ways you can do that.
Exactly. Yep. Okay.
But in this case, we're going to be, in our little trivia app, we're going to stay on the same page.
Exactly. Exactly. Now the last step, so we figured out how we're going to collect the info, figured out how we're going to send it up. The last step then becomes how we're going to read that information. And what you're going to notice is that there's a request form collection where it's going to look for the names on the input controls, match them up, and give me the ability to pull those in. So it's going to be
that's how in my Python code,
yes,
I can say, tell me what they typed into that form.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what we're going to be doing. So you'll notice here, input type equals text, name equals answer. Inside of my Python, it's going to be name equals. So we just declare a variable here, and then request form answer. And you'll notice answer and
those have to match. Because I'll tell you the number of times I've made typing mistakes between those two and said, why am I not getting a value in my Python code? And then I'm like, oh, wait, never mind. I have a typing mistake between the two variable names.
I have a great memory. It's just really short. And so the number of times where I'll put in something over here and then I go into the Python code and I just completely forget what it is that I've done. I really do recommend either one of two things, that either A, you just do them both in tangent. So I go in, create my little bit of code, and then immediately create the form, or B, that I go in and I simply fire up two browser windows so that way I can see them both side by side.
Yeah, have the code editor windows side by side. That's why you want two monitors. By the way, if you haven't done it yet, as you get into coding, one day you're going to want dual monitors.
Oh, every developer, when I take over the world, which will happen, every developer is going to have dual monitors, if not three. I have three at my desk, and I cannot imagine living without it. Yeah, every developer needs dual monitors. Okay, let's go in and create a form here, and this is going to be sort of a little bit of, trust me, we're going to get you there, but I am going to sort of do this in steps. So I'm just going to create a new folder here that I'm going to call templates. We'll talk about why in a minute.
Yep.
And I'm going to create a brand new form here. So I'm going to say add, and I'm going to say new item. And this is going to be create question. There we go. And, whoops, I did that as a Py file.
I didn't think you wanted a Python file. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know the number of mistakes you make is always directly proportional to the number of people watching you.
Yeah, I noticed the moment I had a blank file, I'm like, wait a minute, it's supposed to be in HTML. I don't want to type this in. Create question.
All right, so you're basically creating an HTML file, which is something that you could...
file.
Okay.
Yeah. So just create a new question, and then I'm going to go ahead and say, let's say H2, please create a new question, and then I'm going to create my little form, and I'm going to say method equals post. And you are going to notice, by the way, the IntelliSense does show me other verbs. Mm-hmm. Delete, put. There's also a couple of others. The only two that we're interested in today are get and post.
Okay.
So post, which again is going to send it in the header info. And then I'm going to go ahead and say div, and I'm actually going to get a little fancy here because I'm just feeling like it. So I'm just going to say for equals title, and I'm going to say title. And what that little label is going to do is it's going to look for an input control with a name that matches. So you'll notice name equals title. And so if you click on title, the text title, it will automatically put the focus or put your cursor into that text box. Good. And that's one of those little things that you should get into the habit of, because it makes it more usable with touch. Because then I can touch not only the text box, but the text as well.
And these days with mobile devices and tablets, you're going to have a lot of people using your website on touch devices. So it's something, build up good touch habits early.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, really just designed for touch first. Now, I am going to sort of be a little bit lazy here. And so this is going to be for the question and question and question.
So basically what you're creating is a text box, which
you talk, I'll type.
Yeah, exactly. So we got a text box to display where somebody can enter a title to sort of and specify a category for the type of question they're going to do for our trivia app. We're creating a text box where they can type in a question that they can quiz somebody with, and somewhere where they can type the correct answer. Because our goal, the final app we're going to actually be building today, it's a little trivia application where you can submit trivia questions, and then people can try to answer the different trivia questions.
That's exactly it.
And each trivia question has a title, it has a question, and it has an answer.
There it is. And so that's exactly the form that I have just created right here. Now, let's create one other one real quick here. So I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to say add, new item, and we're going to go to the other side here, and let's go ahead and call this answer question.
Okay, so this is going to be the form which someone's going to use to answer a question, or to be, is this going to be the one where they will be prompted with a question and they type in an answer?
That's correct.
Okay, right. Yep. So on this page, basically, we're going to need to display the question that they have to answer. And we're going to need some sort of text box where they can type in the actual answer to the question that they're prompted with.
That's exactly it. Keep talking.
Keep talking. All right. And you can see that, once again, we need a form, because when we want to send the results back to the server, we're going to need to have a form to do that. And, of course, we post the completed form back to the server. And that's going to allow our Python code, when it receives the form back, to actually find out what they typed in as an answer. Because we're going to have to write Python code to see if they typed in the right answer or the wrong answer, and then react to that.
There it is. Okay, so just like Susan said, so we're creating two different forms here. This is where you're going to be able to upload questions. Now, I know we haven't seen the form yet, and we'll go in and see that in a second. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it this way. Watch this. I just created basic HTML, so let me actually just go into here and Trivia MVA, templates. So there's my basic HTML file.
Yeah.
So let me just right-click, open with Internet Explorer, and sure enough, there is that little form that we just created. And if I hit Submit Answer, that would then upload it. And then the exact same thing would hold true here. Is if I say Open with and Internet Explorer, you'll notice again that there is the one for creating the new question.
Right, because as we said, HTML is a language that the browsers understand. So,
exactly.
So you don't, once you've got it, so all we've literally done here is said, here's an HTML page. You could just ask a browser to display that HTML page, but then when they press Submit button, it doesn't know what Python code to call. That's where all this Flask stuff comes in, and that's why the HTML is part of our bigger application. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, so that's what we need. Now, Susan mentioned a big point here, that this is going to eventually display, hey, enter the correct text for the question. You know what I need right here? You need the question.
Yes, this is true. Somehow we have to, because you're right, somehow Python has to have a way of saying, here's the question to display to the user, and then we can check if they have the right answer.
Yep. Cool. Well, guess what? We got a technology for that.
I'm glad to hear it. Otherwise, we'd be in trouble.
We've got Jinja. So, what is Jinja? Well, I'm glad you asked.
It's like a ninja template.
Yes.
I just love the names in this Flask Python. I'm just having too much fun with these names.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to have fun with the names. So Jinja is a template language, and it, in a nutshell, gives you the ability to inject code into HTML. And that's actually why I just jumped right ahead and I just created the template folder, created a couple of HTML files, because those are basic HTML. And I am going to be able to inject my own code into there just by using Jinja. So for example, if I wanted a bit of code to detect whether or not the person was right and display, congratulations, you're right, or maybe I want to go in and display, sorry, you didn't get the question right, then I can go in and do that. But here's the thing, of course. If I say, sorry, you didn't get the question right, then we're going to need to be able to display what they answered and what the correct answer is.
So I need a way.
Placeholders,
Yeah, so I need a way so that my Python code needs a way of saying, hey, when you display that HTML back to the user, can we pass some values back to display on that page?
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. And so that's what Jinja allows me to do. So these templates are just HTML, nothing fancy, and they're going to be inside of a folder, wait for it, called templates.
So you're putting the routes into a file called routes.py, and now you're storing templates in a folder called templates.
I try to keep things as confusing as possible. Yeah. That's it. Now, one of the interesting things is that Jinja does have a code syntax. So if you want to inject if statements and for loops and so forth into Jinja, you can, and you are going to notice that it's similar to Python, but it's not Python.
Just close enough to confuse you.
Yeah, something like that. That if all I want is placeholders, then I can do that very easily just by using double curly. So double curly placeholder will automatically display those variables in that spot. The question is, well, how are those variables going to be set? Well, as it turns out, there's a brand new method that we're going to have called render template.
So we call this is Python code, this method up here.
This is Python code up top. This is the name of the template, so it's automatically going to look inside of that little templates folder for something, in my case, called template HTML.
Okay.
Sort of abbreviating there. There we go.
Yep.
And it's also, in my case, going to pass in two parameters called name.
Yep.
And called.
So now when I'm saying display that page, I have a way of saying, hey, I want this name to go here. I want this value to go here.
That's exactly it.
Cool.
That's exactly it. And you can also get in and add logic as well. So if you did want to do an if statement, you could do an if statement. If you wanted to do a for statement, which is the first demo that I had on this slide, you can do that as well. Now, here's the catch, is the way that control blocks work, so for loops and if statements, the way that they work is based on tabs, based on positioning. It doesn't really work in HTML, because my positioning is going to change really depending on my HTML, that I want to be able to format my HTML and just have a little bit of code there. So the tabbing isn't always going to come out quite the way that I'm going to want it when I'm dealing with both HTML as well as code. So as a result, we need to get a little bit more explicit here, that you're going to notice that we've got end for to end our for block, and you'll notice that we've got end if to end our if block. Now, I also want to highlight the little correct there and my little names here, and those in my case are simulating parameters that would be passed in again by using that little render template. So if you gave me a collection of names to display, then I could display all of those. And if you gave me a Boolean value, then I can react to that. Now, earlier on this morning, one of the big things that we talked about was the concept of Python Flask and it being a stepping stone for other technologies. So that maybe you want to use this and you want to go off and learn Node, or you want to learn PHP, or you want to learn something near and dear to my heart, MVC. There's an MVA for that. If you want to go off and learn those technologies, a lot of what you're learning today is going to be applicable to there. So let's take MVC, for example. MVC has what are known as views. Views in Flask terms are templates, that what they're designed to do is to display our data.
So these Jinja templates we're creating are kind of like views in MVC.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
That's exactly it. And so as a result, since, again, we're just learning this, we should really start to get into some best practices here.
Yes, good to pick up good habits right off the top.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so as a result, what we want to do is, when we're talking about a view, is keep it a view. That there's this little concept of, model view controller, where our model is our data, our view is how we're going to see it, and then the controller is going to be kind of working a little bit behind the scenes to take the model, combine it with the view, and send it out the door. Our view should basically be dumb. It should not know about what's going on behind the scenes. It should simply take some data and display it.
Right. It shouldn't have business rules, but say things like, oh, if the answer was correct, then I want to do this. If the answer's wrong, I do something else. That's starting to get to the logic of how your program works. And yeah, you don't generally put that inside views.
Exactly. Yeah. So they really shouldn't contain a whole lot of logic. So let that route method that you've been using determine which view to load, and then create different views for different outputs. Because, if we wanted to really, keep digging into this and start creating a lot of error handling and things like that, we're going to want a view to display an error message. And we're going to want a view to display this was correct and this was incorrect, and this is how we're going to ask you for the answer to the question. Because that, in the long run, is going to make things that much more flexible. Because I get to focus then my attention on how do I want this to be displayed and how do I want this to be displayed, rather than injecting a whole bunch of code, because when you start to do that, it's just going to get confusing after a little while. And by the way, while we're talking about our little route methods, it's also not a bad idea to even start creating separate Python files for all of that complex logic, or maybe create classes. Classes. We should talk about creating another MVA on creating classes.
Yeah.
Let's talk later.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. In any event, let's sidestep a little bit here and talk about how we're going to bring all of this together into building our app. So the app that we want is a basic trivia game. So we want to be able to do two things. We want to be able to add questions and answer questions. That's what we want.
Yep.
Now, if you want homework, but later on, you can add on additional functionality. Maybe the ability to delete questions. Maybe the ability to modify questions. So this is going to be kind of our basics. So we want to add questions. We want to answer them. If you want to keep building on from there, you could keep building on from there. So what are we going to need for this? Well, we're going to need the ability to add our questions. So we need a page with a form to add a question. Hey, we've got that already.
Yep.
We need a page to say it was saved.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're going to have to create that
yet. Yeah, we don't have that yet.
And then we need somewhere to save the question.
And that's coming up.
That's coming up.
The next
we don't
module.
have that yet. Yep.
That's when I get to dominate the conversation a little.
You get to write code, and I'm just going to lean back, play on my phone. In any event, the next little thing right here is you're going to notice that we also need the ability to answer questions. So we need a page with a form. We've got that.
Yep.
We need a page to say you're correct. We need that. And we need a page to say that you're wrong. And again, we need that. And we need somewhere to save that question. And again, that's going to be Susan. And so these two items, we're going to see after our break, these three items and the logic to make all of that happen. We're going to see that here in just a couple of moments. But just to put out the big picture there. Our moving parts, there's our route.py file. We've got our create and our question title.
And that was what routes.py was what controlled when someone types in a particular URL, which pages and so on are being displayed.
That's exactly it.
Yep.
We've got those two little methods. We created those earlier. And now we're going to link those up to templates. So we're going to have our create question and created question. Probably not the best name, but
that'll work.
It'll work. And then we're also going to need, for the question side, a form for answer question, and then a correct and an incorrect. So those are going to be the moving parts. This already done. This already done. I need to create this. I need to create this. I need to create this. And I need to update those two.
Oof.
Guess what I'm about to do?
That's quite the to-do list. Okay, so wait a second. So we have, so basically we have a few new web pages we're going to need to create.
Yep.
and we need to make sure we've updated our code so that when the templates are expecting values, that we're passing in the correct values to them.
Exactly.
All
That's
right.
exactly it.
Okay, I think I can keep up with that.
Cool. I'm going to start by creating the HTML, just because that's sort of the easier side, and then I'm going to go back and take a look at the code, so that way we've kind of got that nice, clean separation. And I am going to come back to the slide a couple of times, just so we can kind of keep seeing all of that as we move forward. But let's go in, fire up Visual Studio here, and let's start off by updating our answer question here. So again, we needed to add in our question.
Yep.
Watch.
Right. So now you're using that Jinja syntax to specify that when this page is displayed, I'm going to pass you in a question to display there.
That's exactly it. And let's also go in and add in another real quick new item here. And let's add in the correct, which is spelled ECT.
Okay.
By the way, one little thing to get yourself into the habit of, again, speaking of good habits, always have a title. Always.
Oh, yeah,
always have a title. Always, always, always. Okay, so let's just go in and let's say H2, and congratulations. You're correct.
So this is the page that's going to be displayed when somebody has attempted to answer a question and they've answered it correctly. So
that's it.
Just a nice, simple page that says, congratulations, you've answered it correctly.
And let's go to the other side.
Which is if they get it incorrect?
Yep.
All right, so if this page will be displayed if somebody attempts to answer a question and answers it incorrectly. And
so now what we want to do is let's go in, and again, we'll go with an H2. Sorry, you are incorrect. And then let's go in and let's say, div, the answer is, and let's go in and once again, curly, curly,
Because now, the nice thing is if somebody's got the incorrect answer, it'd be nice to tell them what the correct answer was.
Exactly.
So
we'll go in and we'll call that answer, and then we'll go in and say div, and you said, apparently I've lost my ability to type, curly, curly, and submitted answer. So we'll have to go in and create those variables.
Yeah.
And we'll go back and do that in a minute. But the big thing that I want to highlight here is I want you to notice that, I didn't do anything fancy here, that I went straight from text into the Jinja and into the HTML. And that's one of the very cool parts, is that you could just drop these wherever it is that you need that dynamic text. So wherever you need it, just boom, and there it is. So just that simple to go in and set up. So I really love that capability. Cool.
But obviously, at some point, I'm going to have to go update code to put values, to make sure that when we display that page, we pass in values for answer and submitted answer.
Yeah, we'll need to get there. But before I do that,
we still have some more pages to go.
I think there we one more.
Created question. So this is the page that comes out because we're going to let the people who visit our website add their own questions. So this is the page that's going to come up and tell them that we've successfully accepted the question they've submitted.
That's correct. You asked, and let's just say curly, curly, question. Beautiful.
Okay.
See, just like that. And again, the big thing that I want you to notice here is that 90% of this page is what?
It's basic HTML.
That's it. And only the little bits that we need here are that bit of Jinja. And that's one of the things that I really love about these Jinja templates, is that it makes it very easy to go in and do that. Okay. So let's go back to my slide, just because I think now is kind of a perfect reset point here. And boom, 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 boom.
So you've now created all the forms you have listed there.
Exactly. So we did the form. We did the basic HTML for correct, for incorrect, and for created question.
Okay.
Now we just need to update the code to call all of that. Now, I am going to, as I kick back into Visual Studio here, make my life a little easier. There's two little things that I'm going to need to make this work.
Okay.
I am going to need request. Remember, that's what we're getting from the user. Request.
Yep. Yeah, we were going to use that request.form to ask for values from forms.
That's it. And I'm also going to need my render template. So I'm just going to call those right now. I need those. Now, one of the things that people frequently ask me is they ask, hey, Christopher, how am I supposed to remember that? And chances are there's probably a couple people asking that in the forums right now. And my answer is really kind of threefold. Number one, check out a book, check out the documentation, check out a website, which will explain it all. Number two, watch an MVA, a video like this. Number three, I guess, take a course. And then number four is to actually get in and do it. Because kind of going back to our language analogy here, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to learn vocabulary. So how did I wind up learning the term phantasmagoria? Well, the way that I wound up learning the term phantasmagoria, which, by the way, is for very vivid, lifelike, sometimes a little bit weird dreams. So phantasmagoria, the way that I wound up learning that was just through the people that I wound up meeting, and sort of a long story, but I wound up learning this word because of a couple of people that I met and through just usage and being exposed to the English language. Sort of that same concept here. So how are you supposed to know this? You get in and you keep reading, you keep learning, and you keep using it. And after a little while, it's all going to start to mesh. So a lot of times people will see this and they start to go, oh, I'm never going to remember this. Here's the great thing, is there's a lot of blog posts, documentation, classes, videos, etc., where you can go learn it and you can refer back to it as well. Don't be afraid to go look things up. We all do it. So don't feel the need to memorize it. Just, you will start to just kind of learn this after a little while.
Yeah.
Okay. Phantasmagoria is one of my favorite words. So is discombobulated. It has such an onomatopoetic quality about it.
Moving on. Before I get completely lost, it's too. It's.
Okay. Anyway, so let's go in and start putting together our create. Now, if you remember, what we want to be able to do is set up those two little spots here for the get and for the post. That, remember with get, this is where we're going to send down the form that the user is then going to use. And remember on the post, this is where they've actually given us that data and they're going to be sending that back up. So that's how we're going to know, do they want the form or are they giving us data? Mm-hmm. So on the create side, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if request method. And for whatever reason, I'm getting no completions, but I promise you this will work. And I'm going to go ahead and say, if it happens to be get. So what this tells me is that we need to send the user the form.
Right.
That's it.
So this was like when initially when somebody wanted to comment on the koala picture, we started off by saying, oh, well, let me give you a blank form to enter a comment. In this case, we're sending them a blank form so they can enter their question.
Exactly. So now I'm just simply going to say render template, and now it's going to ask me for the name, and this is going to be create question, HTML, just like that. Otherwise, if it's request method, and if it happens to be post, well, now what I know is that they submitted the form, so now I need to read the form data and save it.
Right.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make your life a little easier here.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I'm going to say title equals request form title. And if you remember from before, we, had all that in there.
All right.
And I'm just going to make my life a little easier. Answer. And question.
So vis-a-vis these names, when you say request form title, request form answer, request form question, these are the same names that we're going to see inside that HTML. There we go, title, question, answer.
There
All
you
right,
go.
awesome. So that's how it knows which fields to read from the form.
That's exactly it. Now, what I'm going to do at the very end here is I am going to add in an else block. just to say return invalid request.
You did mention there were some other ways you could submit. I mean, we're only using get and post in our code, but...
Exactly, yeah. So there could be other verbs. I don't care about any of them, but one of the things that you should always do is account for the fact that somebody may send up a bad request. So that's why I'm going to throw in that else block. But in any event, back to our little post here. The next thing that I need to do is store this in the database.
So that we can store that and have access to it later on if somebody wants that question asked.
Yep.
Yes, this is where Susan will have to do some work. All right, make that note for me. I'll come back later, and I promise I'll come back and I'll add some code there.
Perfect. And then the next little thing is I want to... It'll come to me in a second. Return the template. So we'll say return, render, template, and this is going to be created question. And if you remember on created question, over here, we wanted to display the question.
Right, so in the template, you'd said, you're going to give me a value for question here, so when we call it, we're going to have to pass it a value for question.
And so you'll notice I'm going to say question equals...
So I liked Quesiton.
Or Quesiton. Now, this is one of those things here. When you look at that, it sort of looks a little odd. You're setting question equal to question. You might be thinking, what in the world are you doing?
Yeah, question equals question is a little confusing.
Yeah, of course question equals question. Generally speaking, yes, that's true. Here's the thing, is that the second question is pulling from, I should really draw my line to the right spot, it's pulling from that question variable that I created over here.
Okay.
This first one, right here, this is becoming that brand new parameter.
That's the name that was inside created question.html.
Exactly. So you look at it, and it just sort of seems odd.
It's a little confusing at first glance, for sure.
And I'm completely with you on that. It does look a little bit odd. But if you didn't just simply go with that, what you'd wind up having to do is come up with essentially an arbitrary naming convention just to separate the parameter question from the question variable.
And you do see people that do that. They'll call it like T question equals V question for the variable question versus template question.
Yeah, and M and P and all sorts of
P question, T question, P question.
If it's a question, it's a question, and just keep it with that. And honestly, I think in the long run, it is going to make your code more readable. Okay, so now let's go in and let's build up the second one here, which is going to be question title. So what we're going to need here is, once again, if request method is get, and this is again going to be where we need to, I'm just going to make sure my tabbing is in the right spot. There we go. Send the user the form. So this is going to be return render template, and this is going to be an answer question. That's what I called it. Answer question HTML. And again, we're going to need the question. So we'll say question equals question, which means up top here that we're going to need to grab the question. So I'm going to need to say question equals question here.
Yep.
But of course, we don't want to hard code that in. We are going to want to get some data. So once again, we'll go in and say read question from data store.
That looks like more work for me to do later.
Yep, Susan, please add code here. All right. And then we'll go and say elif and request. Come here.
So once again, this is the idea of somebody's going to be asking, somebody wants to try and answer one of our trivia questions. So first they pass in a web page with the category or title of the question they want to be asked. And then we say, oh, you want that? So we pass them back the question with the blank in a blank form so that they can type in an answer. And then they type in the answer and they hit that submit button, and that submit and that form, we said forms do a post when you hit that submit button.
Correct.
So then when it comes back here, it goes to the post. So they've now typed in an answer, and we come back and we can look up that answer.
That is correct. Double equals. Now, here's the thing, is that we now need to, once again, do a little bit of work here, because now we need to go get that question, or read the answer rather, read the answer from the data store.
Yep. To see if they gave us the correct answer.
Correct. So, Susan, we're going to need some more code here.
All right, we'll see what we can do.
All right. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm just simply going to say answer equals answer, just because I want a placeholder.
Sure.
And then down below, I'm going to say if it turns out that the submitted answer equals the answer,
right?
Then we're going to go in and say render template. And they were correct. I need to return that, I know.
And that one, we didn't specify any particular variables inside that particular render template, so we don't have to pass in any parameters except which HTML template to display.
That's correct. HTML, and I want submitted answer.
Right, because when we were telling that we did say design our template for when you tell them it's an incorrect answer, that we were going to tell them you answered this, but the correct answer was this.
Correct.
That template. So that one we do have to pass its parameters.
I need a colon. There we go. Okay. Now, so we've got all of this now baked in. So just to kind of walk through the logic here, what you're going to notice is if it turns out that it's a get, then what we're going to do is we're going to load up the question, and we're going to display out the little form that shows the question and the little text box where they can answer it. If it turns out that it's post, what that does is that tells us that they made the submission. So then in that case, what we're going to do is we're going to read the answer that they gave us from the form. We're going to load the answer up from the data store. We're going to check to see if they got it right. If they did, we send them correct. Otherwise, we send them incorrect.
Okay.
That's sort of the review there. Now, the last thing that we need to do is we need to also add in the methods that this is now going to accept. We need to tell it to actually accept both get and post. Now, in theory, this also kind of means that I don't necessarily need that invalid. I still like to have it there, just because I think it's a good practice that if you know that there's potentially multiple items here, that it could be, get, post, delete, and a few others, let's just make sure that we've got a catch-all. And so that's why I like that down at the very bottom. Okay. Now, give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to scan my code.
Give it a glance through.
And I just want to make sure that I could actually call something here. So we're really cooking here. I give this a 70% chance.
All right.
Create a question. Let's hit create. Title.
Hey, can you do me one quick little thing? Could you bring up that command window again? Because I think it's neat the way you can see if it's doing the get or the posts. So we can see how the first time it's actually bringing up that page. When it's requesting form, you can see it's doing gets, gets, and gets. It hasn't actually done a post yet. Correct.
Yep. And by the way, ignore the fave icon. Yeah. Okay. So there's that. So let's go in, and I'm just going to go very creative here. Test. Question is, when was the Battle of Hastings? And I'm going to go with 1066, which is the right answer. And I'm going to click submit. And sure enough, you're going to notice that it tells me, thank you for your question. You asked, when was the Battle of Hastings? Now, you'll also notice that I did, in fact, set all of that up. But, of course, I don't have a data store, so it's not actually stored behind the scenes. But the main point that I want to highlight here is the fact that this is baked off of that template. And to go all the way back to something that we mentioned earlier this morning, this is going to work regardless of the browser. And you'll notice there's no way that I, as the user, can tell that this used a template. This is HTML. I have no idea that this actually used a template. And if I bring up a non-competitive browser from another company, and I paste in that exact same URL, chugga, 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 come on. Did I close out my command prompt? Oh, okay. It was just
There it
taking
is. Just taking some time.
Yep. So we'll go with test and what is your name? And Christopher, not really a trivia question, and hit submit. You're going to notice it works. So again, regardless of the browser, it still works.
Right, because and you can't even tell it was written in Python.
Exactly.
Because
and that's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's just HTML, but gets sent up to that browser.
And what the server's doing is irrelevant. Cool. So just to kind of review here, we've now got the create and question methods created.
Yep.
We've got our create question and our created question.
Yep.
So both steps there. And then answer question and both the right and wrong there. But the last thing that we're missing is a data store.
Right.
That's your job, but I'm hungry.
I think everybody could use a little break because it's amazing how much you guys, if you look at that code now and figure out how much you've really mastered, there's a lot of content.
Yeah, so really, what did we learn here? Well, you're going to notice that we learned how to create and use those Jinja templates.
Yep.
We learned how to create those forms. And so now we actually have enough to start creating real-world applications that don't use databases.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yep.
But let's go ahead. We'll take a meal break, and we're going to be back in about an hour. Enjoy.
See you soon.